current series exploring the question of whether we can trust the Bible, we now turn our focus on the New Testament texts. Again, there are many out there who, unaware of the facts, believe the New Testament to be historically unreliable. They look at the miracles, the claims of Christ's resurrection from the dead, things which aren't a part of their normal everyday experience, and conclude it just cannot be true. A few conjuring tricks might have fooled some rather gullible peasants 2,000 years ago, but we're far more sophisticated. The wonders of modern science and education have opened our eyes. Or perhaps they weren't fooled, but just embellished the facts, sexed them up, to use a modern turn of phrase. We'll come to those presuppositions later. For now, let us focus, as we did with the Old Testament, on the question of the reliability of the manuscripts which document those incredible, seemingly unbelievable events of the first century Palestine. In doing so, we need to ask three important questions. First, when were they written? The truth is, the closer they are in time to the events in question, the more reliable a source they will be, especially if they were within living memory of the events that took place. If they were written at a time when the eyewitnesses were still alive, it is hard to see why they were not successfully discredited, hard to see why the Christian faith, in its fragile, embryonic state, could have survived to become what it is today. Second, when was the earliest full New Testament manuscript copy that we have today originally written? When was it written? And third, what length of time elapsed between the original penning of the New Testament to the writing of that full manuscript copy? After all, some could claim that it wasn't the original disciples who allegedly embellished the historical facts, but those who followed them, those who are responsible for that full manuscript copy. Now, with these last two questions, we will compare the data against other historical works of ancient literature, and we shall see as we do so that some rather startling facts emerge. Okay, let's start with question 1. When was the New Testament written? Now, you may or may not be aware that the New Testament comprises not of one book written at one date, but several books of differing types or genres, Gospels, historical accounts and letters, written over a number of years. In fact, the consensus is that the earliest New Testament document dates from about 40 AD, with the latest being written about 100 AD. Now, that means that the earliest accounts were written about 10 years after the death of Christ, and the latest about 70 years. And that puts much of the original New Testament writing within living memory of the events said to have taken place, and the rest within at least one generation. How is it then that those with a vested interest in discrediting the Gospels catastrophically failed to do so? Why, for example, when Jesus' followers began claiming that he had risen bodily from the dead, did the Pharisees not simply point them in the direction of the body? The corpse of the said Christ would certainly have silenced and shamed would-be proponents of the resurrection. One might answer, though not entirely convincingly, partly for reasons that will become clear, that the original accounts compiled by Jesus' immediate followers never included claims to a resurrection or a virgin birth, or indeed any of the other miracles. Perhaps these details were added later and were very much part of the mythology surrounding Jesus by the time of that complete manuscript copy of the New Testament that we have in our possession today. Certainly, this is one of the assumptions of the Jesus Seminar in their quest to discover the real historical man, and I put the emphasis there, the man behind the Gospels. Let us turn our attentions now to questions 2 and 3. In doing so, it will hopefully become clear why such a corruption of the New Testament is highly unlikely to have taken place. Now, I want to compare the New Testament, which claims to be historical, with other historical works of the ancient world. Let's use a table to make this clear. In it we will compare Caesar's Gallic War, written 58 to 50 BC, Livy's Roman History, written 59 BC to 17 AD, Pliny the Younger's History, written 61 to 113 AD, Herodotus's History, written 488 BC to 428 BC, and of course the New Testament, which I've already stated was written between 40 to 100 AD. Now, with reference to question 2, the earliest full copy that we have of each of these works dates to 900 AD in Caesar's Gallic War, 900 AD in Livy's Roman History, 850 AD in the case of Pliny the Younger's History, 900 AD in the case of Herodotus's History, and in the case of the New Testament, 300 to 350 AD. And with reference to question 3, let's compare that date with the aforementioned dates of the original writing and see just how much time has elapsed for each. In the case of Caesar's Gallic War, we do a quick calculation and realise it's 950 years, almost 1,000 years. Livy's Roman History, 883 years. Pliny the Younger's History, down to 737 years. Herodotus's History, well, we go back up here, 1,328 years. And of course, as I said, the New Testament, well, 200 to 250 years. As you can see, there is significantly less time for any textual corruption or embellishment to take place for the New Testament writing. Now, for fun, let's add on, in the far right of the table, the number of manuscript copies, partial and full, in existence for each of these works. The Gallic War, well, there's 10 of those. Livy's Roman History, well, there's 20 of those. Pliny the Younger's History, just 7. Herodotus's History, that's 8. And the New Testament, well, 24,300. As Sir Frederick Kenyon, an authority in the field of New Testament textual criticism, has said, scholars are satisfied that they possess substantially the true text of the principal Greek and Roman writers whose works have come down to us. Yet our knowledge of their writing depends on a mere handful of manuscripts, whereas the manuscripts of the New Testament are counted by the hundreds, even thousands. It's also been said, this time by F.F. Bruce, that there is no body of ancient literature in the world which enjoys such a wealth of good textual attestation as the New Testament.